Hi, I'm Alex from Heroic Journey, and today we're going to talk about originality. One of the more normal concepts that comes from RP and art is that I want to, role-playing games and art is that I want to be original. It results in a slight oddity about my closer and better documented universes. One of which is that I have a lot of cyborgs. But that needs even more explanation. I read, collected, and enjoyed far more Marvel than DC. Marvel has mutants, and one of the types of enemies they face is technological opponents. Sentinels, cyborgs from Donald Pearson to the Reavers, are also using advanced technology themselves, image inducers to their danger room to their jet. One day I noticed the duology of the theme mutants battling technology, and then thought about reversing it as a way to be original while admiring the original body of work. So I switched the groups. Those who were mutants became cyborgs and vice versa. So far it works well, but let me know what you think in the comments below when you have an opportunity. Bionics, also known as bionicle creativity engineering, it can be a mouthful, or cybernetics. This power covers the concept of the replacement or improvement of parts of a body that may just be all too frail in a world with superpowers. Whether made of metal, synthetic material, sometimes organics in the modern age concepts, or the ages-old idea of enchanted limbs and steampunk-powered parts in previous eras, we're talking about basically half man, half machine, or other. Often written characters have half of their body replaced or some odd amalgamation of parts frequently necessary just for survival, and a symbiosis of man and machine grant enhanced abilities, almost on accident. With the advancement of science and medicine, cyberware is no longer considered to be just metal machines grafted onto a human. Instead, some forms of cyberware are now grown from the character's own cells, or have those cells, organs, limbs altered through various means to create the desired effects. In most recent cyberbiotics media examples, there is a balancing condition to these modifications, bringing in question of whether or not the person with the majority of body replacements are even truly human anymore. Suffering from a loss of emotions and feelings of inhumanity, bringing to the fore a man versus self on society issues. Major changes to the human body by outside forces can force a dramatic reconsideration of self-image, to say the least, and be a source for interesting limitations as well as a fairly interesting source for role-playing ideas. Always important to a role player. Because this is a power, no matter the limitations, it should be an advantage, often a significant one, to take the characters to at least the lower levels of metahuman combat. And because of the infinite possible suggestions for enhancements and improvements, the power may generate the GM and player should work together to create a reasonable suite of powers for the character as well as allow advancement. Talking about attack powers for bionics can include enhanced generic abilities like strength or agility, enhanced combat statistics like a damage modifier or accuracy bonuses, to put it in V&V terms, concealed weapons, pistols and poison darts are often a favorite, and unusual abilities tapping into characters' different power sources are all possibilities, whether radiation, sonic, electrical attacks, or some other power source. Bionics are often crafted with survival in mind, so defensively, bionics can add a whole new dimension to characters, whether as parts that are tougher than the original organics, to the ability to leave behind broken parts of the body and possibly easily repair or replace such losses, the ability to have inherently tougher bodies because of modifications or even reserves of air or liquids, the ability to cut off pain sensations, so on and so forth. With cybernetics, there's also a wide variety of unusual attachments that could be added to bionic limbs that could enhance movement, such as stretchable limbs, magnetic grapples, etc. Here again are the options. They're just bewildering for the really imaginative. Common and movement enhancements for abilities for Borgs generally involve running or leaping, or other leg-oriented alterations like faster or untiring legs. Don't ignore the fact that you could have a grappling hook in your arm, though. And classic bionics often deals with the replacement or loss of an eye or an ear, granting not only a restoration of the loss, but superhuman ranges of hearing, vision, all the way to unusual additional abilities like subharmonic senses or infrared ultraviolet vision, which was uncommon in the day. These days is a lot more common. More recent science cyborgs are gifted with enhanced computer skills, including technological communication skills. Always important to consider when you're building a character. Magical replacements, on the other hand, suggest different abilities. Perhaps a character could lose an eye and gain a much enhanced wisdom, represented by enhanced intelligence or charisma, visions of the past or future, or some other ability. The examples of body powers I've come up with are things like additional limbs. The character has locations to attach additional limbs that can provide a variety of interesting effects. The character may not be able to always run faster by adding additional legs, but by becoming an effective centaur, the character may be able to move more like a quadruped, gain additional carrying capacity, and reduce knockback, as well as the character may be able to ignore certain disabling effects simply by having enough limbs to compensate for the loss of a few. And while more arms may mean more opportunities to attack, the character will still probably have to expend the power and take the accuracy penalties for multiple attacks, considering the other arms may get in the way of the first couple of arms. The next concept is bioorganics. After being altered with grafts of perfectly matched biological material, frequently cloned, there is any one of several ways characters could gain some interesting abilities. Externally speaking, the character could gain some of the following ideas, such as bonuses to strength, endurance, agility, initiative. Increased stats are not the only way to go, because there are potentially a lot of other interesting options. Internally speaking, with an increased liver function, the character not only could never get drunk, but might have a 50% reduction in effects duration, or a 50-50 save against poisons, even those that don't normally allow them. The possibilities for improved digestion and fat storage system could enable the character to gain sustenance from nearly any organic compound, as well as only needing to eat once a week for up to 6 months at a stretch. Other ideas can be drawn on from the body power section, another power I haven't mentioned yet, but eventually I'll talk about, as well as other different sources of internal modified powers. Supplemental to the other advantages, the character is able to pass through metal detectors, as well as avoid the attentions of magnetic masters and mental manipulators that frequently target other cyborgs. Not an inconsequential thing to consider. I humorously include the idea of a bowling ball butt. The character's butt is usable as a weapon in addition to a resting place for several other kinds of items. The character gains a free attack on opponents to the side they face away from when changing facings for free, but they don't gain accuracy benefits. Could be an interesting way to perform actions like is seen in the movie Robots, which you should check out sometime if you haven't already. Another concept is concealed weapons. As an expansion of some of the more common Cyborgs options, there is the ability to bring along a variety of weaponry, often integrated into the base systems, making it difficult to alter or remove, ranging from concealed slug throwers and dart guns to blades to hidden energy weapons, possibly powered off the character's internal systems. Bioorganic are often more like animalistic offensive capacity, possibly similar to concealed stingers, retractable teeth and claws, or concealed marsupial-like pouches in some cases. Care should be taken to keep a minimum of any sort of overlap between this power and poisons or innate natural weaponry, though certainly those powers can inspire each other with options. All part of making the character really iconic rather than going upon the same ideas and drawing upon old tropes. I've also wrote down the idea about crystal chip element. The character possesses structured silicates instead of merely metals. This results in a few changes to mechanics of being a cyborg. The character is more resistant to magnetic attacks, but sonic abilities and possibly light abilities are more dangerous. An interesting way to rebalance the character and make them feel like something different. The next concept up is deflective dermal armor. The character has plates either cunningly hidden under or by some sort of skin, or as the final dermal layer designed to protect internal organs or systems from damaging blows. The character gains in V&V 4d10 hit points and 2d10 power, only to be used for absorbing damage. The power is recovered immediately after battle, while health is restored at 5 times the character's healing rate per hour spent repairing the plates and skin. Another concept is E-legs. The character has only cyberized legs, though the wear is concentrated in the character's lower half. The movement advantages can make up for the lack of upper torso alterations. The character can perform up to 4 kicks in a round, dealing plus 1d3 steps worth of damage, and has 20 PR per combat for covering the cost of multiple attacks. These attacks are also difficult to defend against, -1 to evasion efforts, but take place one phase after the regular attack phase. In addition, these kicking attacks are only at -1 for each additional attack. A powerful way to add a couple of additional abilities to your character. The next concept is energy-based economy. No longer driven by simple machines, the character has gained new conceptual parts that are beginning to cross over into energy-based life forms. In some cases, the character may collect and provide energy, or condense energy supplies that are of much use to others. At the base for the character may gain, and power volumes must be determined. They may be sold or traded for other valuable items, or used to attack opponents, typically as light control with a bonus to hit and dice per power volume. Not a complete concept yet, and I'll have to work on it later. One of the more common abilities is just enhanced hearing. A fairly standard bionic power dating back to some of the first bionic character concepts is to add some sensory improvements, typically starting with the auditory system. The character gains plus duty 20% to detect hidden or detect danger with an auditory component. An important defensive maneuver, as well as sensory-based. Another concept is if the character is based upon experimental medicine. The character is powered not by mechanical science, but instead by pharmaceutical sciences, and enable the character to operate at higher levels of ability than those without. Some of these are much more powerful than the temptations athletes and others in demanding high-performance positions desire. Typically, this gives character plus 1d6 to initiative, plus 1d10 times 1d6 in ground movement, and up to 1d4 other minor gifts, depending upon the exact chemical composition. Just sort of a fun idea to have. The next idea is genetic grafts. Unlike many bionically endowed characters, the person has alterations to the genetic code grafted on as a part of an operation to repair, subsume, or enhance their abilities. Typically, the advanced medicines remove the cybernetic defense, allow the character to heal 1 hit point per hour, and add 10% to carrying capacity for hand-to-hand damage calculations, as some base V&V concepts. The next one is half-man. Having had close to or over 50% of their body replaced, the often experimental body parts can give the following modifiers. Plus 1d6 to strength overall, plus 1d4 damage steps with the replacement limbs, minus 2 to be hit from the mechanical side. The parts and implants occasionally deflect attacks or absorb more damage than human parts would, and the ability to continue to walk while resting or unconscious, as well as plus 30 to 65% bonus hit points, typically using 1d8 times 5% plus 25 base percent. However, the healing of these additional hit points is performed by having a character, including the character themselves if they are conscious, with the mechanic or a cyber or an id sciences role, work upon the cyber parts of the character. Characters are capable of making repair attempts at the rate of 1 per hour, repairing the character's healing rate and damage per success, and costing $1,000 in materials and energies per point repaired. Not necessarily cheap, but honestly, it can be a lot faster sometimes than what repairs you would get just by resting. The next concept is called Hook Me Up. The character can enter various alternate reality areas representing the net, cyberspace, etc., and then proceed to perform various actions. The character could perform activities outside through links with the real world, but a GM should be careful that individuals inside and outside the alternate reality have enough to do or quickly enough resolved in order to keep things interesting for both groups. Sort of the whole concept of making sure that the player character spotlight doesn't exclude other people. Another concept found in Bionics is the indestructible skeleton. The character could be gifted with a skeleton that's internal and has a much higher ability to absorb and distribute combat effects than an ordinary human skeletal system does, usually represented by granting armor effects. Primarily, there are 2 effects of this. The first is that there's a fiat declaration that the character's bones won't be broken, and certain other agreements to the benefits of the indestructible bones. The character's skull won't be broken even by planetary force trying to crush it, so the character could take some damage from events, like a door being closed on his head, but he'll stay head's width open, possibly allowing others out or in. The character also gains increased weight, typically 1.5 multiplier, and additional basic hits representing the presumed additional mass and defensive benefits of the skeletal alterations. Of course, these ideas can be modified and changed, but that's the basic way. Another concept I had was infrared scope and beam. Similar design to the infrared sighting system has two settings. The first setting uses ambient heat differentials in order to pick up targets by their heat signature. The second setting uses an IR projector as a primary light source, generating a beam similar to a flashlight that can only be seen by those with IR senses. This beam, though directional, does allow those with IR senses to pick up the detected radiations much further in the same direction, but does give the prime user a great deal of sensory input and control. Important considerations. The next concept is limb independence. 1 to 4 of a cybernetically enhanced individual's limbs can be detached and obey their mental radio or pre-programmed commands. Each limb may be useful in combat as an independent agent and may fly up to 50 miles for up to an hour. 50 miles per hour up to an hour, so a range of 50 miles, even if the character does not normally possess flight. Of course, the character must give up the use of the limbs while they're independently operating, but you could do things like, for example, leave a hand at a computer station so that way they could then hack into it later when the character is elsewhere, and then escape through like the deck system would be a good way to use this. The next concept is called, my God, what did they do? It's an example of giving someone else control in a situation in hopes of receiving additional power from the ability. The character receives 1d3 additional power-like abilities of a technological theme, as well as 20% chance per power-like ability of having an additional challenge or problem. All these powers are either chosen by the GM or another player in order to best represent someone else making the call as to what to have installed, and then kept secret from the player with this power, representing an internal mystery to be solved by the player. The GM is encouraged to reward the players involved appropriately with in-game experience for playing along. One of those balancing things you need to do on occasion is if they expend a little bit of extra effort because you tap them to do so, reward them to do so. The next concept is mystical life additions. This version of the Bionic's power covers some of the legendary ideas of limb replacement or physiological improvements through better mysticism. The two famous examples in some of the more common legends include Nuada of the Silver Hand, having a replaced hand made of silver, and the other one is Odin sacrificing his eye in order to gain wisdom. Because it's mystical, the realm just blows wide open at that point. It could be any sort of enchanted idea that could really help the character. The next idea is what I like to call necronics. Instead of using bio, life, nix, this variant uses parts of the dead in order to improve human functioning, just thus exchanging necro, death, for bio, resulting in necronics, necro plus nix. For those who wish to reject this concept, keep in mind the organ donor program, which does use donated organs of the deceased to grant others the benefits of improved life quality. In many mundane cases, this does not trigger the biotic weakness or grant the character additional powers. However, from a power ruled point of view, the abilities could be as simple as granting additional skills, typically gained from the deceased, like having a pianist's hands transferred in one movie example with that of a serial killer, and how that could be eventually useful, to granting incredible powers, sometimes with the price. If you have, for example, someone else's arm and they can fire energy blasts from that arm, could you also fire energy blasts? Questions to be answered by this concept. The next idea is called not a robot. Cyborgs generally differ from robots in that they still have much of their humanity about them, not just physically but mentally also. At the level of a full body replacement, the character has so few parts left of their own body left that the difference between a cyborg and a robot becomes very small indeed, possibly necessitating surgery to find the difference. Sort of one of those things where you would then build the character almost as a robot, tapping many of those concepts in the game and bringing them forth into the cyborg character, but still keeping in mind that there should be a few differences that enable everybody to understand that you're really dealing with a robot, not that you're really dealing with a cyborg, not a robot. The next title is kind of a bad name. It's called Server Rate. Some people. Although the power has a dreadful name, it does reflect the current status of what some cyborgs and hackers can do. Basically, I mechanized this into making an ID20 save versus the opposing system's main operator's ID20 save. Then a charisma-based D20 versus charisma-based D20 roll. If you win one or both of those, you get certain benefits in the game, as opposed to, if you didn't succeed at all. The next idea is called Solving Cyborg. Growing cultures from the host body that duplicates the bone and fingernail growth locations. Thus, the body grows a hardened outer sheath for the upcoming cyberlimb attachment location, providing much more stability and wear reduction, as well as preventing pain during dislocation events and circumstances, as well as reducing necrotizing events. It's not really well defined as a mechanical at this point. I'll have to work on that some, and I think I have a later version that'll really help out. The next concept is what I like to call Springborg. Unlike modern cyborgs, this is more of a clockwork or steam tech version of a cybernetic individual. This version of cybernetics could rely upon a variety of interesting advantages and limitations to make the character vary from most of his opponents. Especially true in a heavy cyborg campaign that's to help make the character more iconic. Ideas like, here's the wind-up, the character spends an action winding up, and then expends no power on his next action set, so long as he declares the actions to his GMs beforehand or writes them down. So that way there's an idea of what's going to happen pre-programmed. I'll have a few other ideas on that later. The next concept is what I like to call switch-out joints. One of the advantages of having cybernetics is, unlike a purely organic form, this biosis can change out 10 to 100% with, using a 1d10 times 10%, with 10% meaning fingers, toes, while 100% means at the torso. Each limb length enabling the character to repair up to 50% of the replacement percentage very quickly, 1 man or less, as well as have limbs designed for special situations, like the remote limbs mentioned previously, frog legs that increase swimming speed, special gun arms, and all sorts of other specialized items for increasing the character's odds of success on a mission, or performing specialized events. They could have a laser arm, oxygen supply arm, neutralizer arm, and many kinds of critical assignment arms and legs the character can use in a variety of situations without needing surgery. The next concept's a little bit weak, I need to work on it, but it's called telescoping spine. The character's body has been modified so that the character can attack anyone within an extra 1 inch game scale simply by extending his spine. The character should be careful about low ceilings and overhangs as a general rule when using his power. I'm not sure what else I should do to make the concept more useful as a fully fleshed out idea, but I think it'll be iconic eventually. The last concept is called trionics, a more advanced form than bi or 2 onyx. Tri or 3 onyx is supposed to be a step above the ordinary cybernetics. This concept is more useful to those running longer campaigns wherein bionics could be outdated or seen as outmoded. Sometimes this power is used to indicate the most modern advanced form of mechanized organic adaptation. Just a few ideas to, sort of get the ball rolling would be things like, if a character has a laser arm, the character could have like a Gatling laser update for a trionics arm. So those are the ideas I've developed so far in the cybernetics bionics field, and that's basically good for both players and GMs as concepts on things that they might want to be able to do and deal with. So this is Alex for Heroic Tourney, and I want you to be the best player you can be.